Senator Whitmer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise for my no vote explanation. I rise in opposition to the so-called citizens initiative before us that would require Michigan women to pay for a separate insurance rider to cover abortions, regardless of the circumstances surrounding their pregnancy. Apparently, the holiday season of goodwill toward men reads more like your will toward women, as the Republican male majority continues to ignorantly and unnecessarily weigh in on important women's health issues that they know nothing about. As a legislator, a lawyer, a woman, and the mother of 2 girls, I think the fact that rape insurance is even being discussed by this body is repulsive, let alone the way it has been orchestrated and now shoved through the legislature. And for those of you who want to act aghast that I'd use a term like rape insurance to describe the proposal here in front of us, you should be even more offended that it's absolutely accurate description of what this proposal requires. This tells women that were raped and became pregnant that they should have thought ahead and bought special insurance for it. By moving forward on this initiative, Senate Republicans want to essentially require Michigan women to plan ahead and financially invest in health care coverage for potentially having their bodies violated and assaulted. Even worse, it would force parents to have similar and unthinkably terrible discussions about planning the same for their daughters. I've said it before and I will say it again. This is by far one of the most misogynistic proposals I've ever seen in the Michigan legislature. And I'm not the only one who knows that. Right to Life of Michigan has pushed this twice before, and 2 times before, 2 different Republican governors stood up and vetoed it with conviction. Just last year, we were dealing with the very same issue, and Governor Snyder, when he vetoed it, said, "I don't believe it's appropriate to tell a woman who becomes pregnant due to a rape that she needed to select elective insurance coverage." Apparently, by bringing this back up, you would disagree with him. You believe that women should be told they should have selected elective insurance coverage before they got raped. That is exactly what your yes vote here today means. Unfortunately, in their thirst for political power at all costs, Right to Life refused to abandon their extremist agenda in the face of political and public opposition to this terrible idea. Instead, they started this petition drive to circumvent the governor entirely. More shamefully, their plan is to circumvent the people of Michigan. Make no mistake, this is anything but a citizen initiative before us. It's a special interest group's perverted dream come true. Right to Life gathered around 300,000 signatures. It might sound a lot, but it only makes up 4% of our voting population. They had to use blatant lies to even convince people that this was something worthy of signing. They told the public this was about preventing Obamacare for paying for abortions. Bull. This is about interfering with private insurance carriers and preventing them from covering needed health care for women. Right to Life told the public their goal was to put this issue on the ballot for all of us to vote on, everyone in the state. Again, evidenced by what you're doing here today, a complete lie. Their goal was always to use a loophole in the Constitution to turn something into law despite it being supported only by a small minority of our people. And those of you on the other side of the aisle are all too happy to be puppets in this offensive game, impacting women's lives. The reality is, over the past couple of weeks, I've heard from nearly as many Republicans as I have Democrats, including many Republicans that even signed Right to Life's initiative, who are disgusted to find out you are subverting the democratic process to make this law. To claim something is a citizen's initiative, or that you're only acting on the will of the people, you have to be able to back that up. but you can't even come close. Not only are you trying to enact a law brought to us by only 4% of our population, but polling suggests only 1/3 of Michigan's entire population supports your plan. By the way, I've seen the polling, and that abysmal support is true in every one of your districts. In what world does that constitute a will of the people? You could, of course, actually show that you believe in the people's right to speak for themselves. You could let this initiative instead go to a vote of the people next November. Your action is in complete disregard for the variety of circumstances women face. Circumstances you either don't understand or frankly don't care about. This applies to a planned pregnancy that has gone awry when a woman needs a medically necessary D&C procedure. It also applies to the deplorable acts of rape and incest that result in an unwanted pregnancy. These women will have no recourse unless they anticipated the unimaginable, unless they planned to have these unspeakable things happen to them. And let's be clear, this stance is not pro-abortion or anti-children born through rape or incest. This stance is merely upholding a woman's right to make her own decisions about her own body and letting people privately contract for their insurance coverage. I have a lot more prepared remarks here, but I think it's important for me to just mention a couple things. We read a letter from a woman named Jenny Lane when it first became clear that this legislature was going to move forward on this issue. In an effort to try to give a face to the women that you are hurting by moving this forward. I believe her letter is going to be read here on the floor again, and I implore you to listen. Because there are people in this chamber who've lived through things you can't even imagine. I have a colleague who I was trying to encourage to tell his story, but he's still grieving. But it was a planned pregnancy that went awry and required a D&C. And I started to think about that, and I thought, I can't push one of my colleagues to share a tough story if I'm not brave enough to share one of my own. And so I'm about to tell you something that I've not shared with many people in my life. But over 20 years ago, I was a victim of rape. And thank God it didn't result in a pregnancy. Because I can't imagine going through what I went through and then having to consider what to do about an unwanted pregnancy from an attacker. And as a mother with 2 girls, the thought that they would ever go through something like I did keeps me up at night. I thought this was all behind me. You know how tough I can be. The thought and the memory of that still haunts me. If this were law then, and I had become pregnant, I would not be able to have coverage because of this. How extreme does this measure need to be? I'm not the only woman in our state that has faced that horrible circumstance. I am not enjoying talking about it. It's something I've hidden for a long time. But I think you need to see the face of the women that you are impacting by this vote today. I think you need to think of the girls that we're raising and what kind of a state we want to be where you would put your approval on something this extreme. I ask that you at least let the people of the state have a vote on this. Don't ram it through using some loophole that is going to impact 100% of the women in this state when only 4% of the people signed onto a petition. Let the people decide. Let the people of Michigan decide. I ask that my comments be my no vote explanation.